A day or two removed from the 2025 NFL Draft. It's in the books, and joining us in studio right off the rip here is General Manager Brandon Beane, who selected 9 players and will be adding a collection of undrafted players before rookie minicamp gets rolling. So, Brandon, glad you can exhale and take a breath now. So, the draft class wound up leaning heavily on the defensive side of the ball, and I think some of us anticipated it would, not just because of perceived needs, but because of where the strengths of this class kind of lied as well. Can you remember a draft that lined up as favorably to your perceived positional needs as this one did?
That's a great question, Chris. I'd have to think about that. Not in probably the most recent years,
Yeah.
no. I would say you nailed it in the sense that when we really dig in deep in the draft, in our February meetings when the scouts are here a couple of weeks, we're grinding through, and you're trying to eliminate guys that and through that process that don't fit you personally or how they play or their style. And so we were eliminating guys, but a lot of the D-line stayed, and you really felt going to Indianapolis, and we lined up a lot of guys to interview. Let's see if any of these eliminate themselves. And for the most part, a good portion of them stayed. We did eliminate some for some reasons, but for the most part, a good portion stayed. And we're like, let's take advantage of this when it fits. Let's don't just take one and say, oh, well, we got one, let's go take another position. If there's a guy sticking out, now maybe if we're equal value and we've already taken a D lineman or a D tackle, in the case of why do we go back to Deone Walker, well, he was sticking out, and we felt like too good a value in the 4th round to pass up.
And this is one of those drafts as well. Your 5 first picks are the spots that everybody's been talking about, particularly on our show. We're getting called as corner, and it's defensive line, corner, it's edge, it's defensive tackle. And he got 5 guys right out of the gate. And he brought in competition, not only for the guys that are already on the roster that you signed, the veterans, but also with this draft class. You got 3 corners, 3 defensive linemen. That's going to be a really hot competition coming into training camp. And like you said, competition makes you better.
Yeah, I mean, that's the ultimate goal. When we start every offseason before we go to Indianapolis, before we start free agency, is, how do we build as much depth and competition? You do look at some spots and you say, okay, no one's competing with Josh Allen to be the starter. Sure. But there's other spots that you're like, hey, we need someone to compete. We do not, just because this player started here last year, doesn't mean that's what we want this year. And if they are going to start, we need someone to make them raise the level. And so that's what you're doing through the spring. And to your point, I think some of those positions you hit on, it will be some fun battles. I mentioned that the other night. When we get to St. John Fisher and the pads are on, I know you, Steve, you're probably going to be down there watching the D-line and the O-line go at it.
Yeah, big guys are more fun.
Yeah.
I tried to ask you this question Saturday night, Brandon. In hindsight, probably could have asked it better, so I'm going to try again. Your board is what governs you and your decision-making, and it should, because you and your staff spent an entire year putting it together to come up with the information to stack it. When you trade up twice for defensive tackles, it can look on the outside like there are additional influences playing a factor in those decisions. Is it really just rooted in believing that what prompts you to move? Is it really rooted in believing that other teams have a specific prospect you have your eye on and they're not going to last because other teams feel similarly? Or is it more general supply and demand kind of deal?
I think it's all the above. You're putting all the facts together, and you've built your board. If your board is wrong, then it doesn't matter. Even if you're building it and you're putting the work, and you have to trust your board. That is what you're putting all your time and effort. Starts with our college scouts. We add our pro scouts towards the end, and we add our coaches the last 2 months.
Right.
And you're putting all of that, the medical data, you're putting all of that in to build your board. There's guys that they're like a D medical that maybe belong in the 2nd round, but we have some longevity concerns. Maybe we put them a round or 2 lower. So all those things, you build your board now how you value them. And then when you have a player like TJ Sanders, the first trade up we did, who is sticking on your board and he meets a need, what are you waiting on? go get him if you can find a partner. Now, there's been times before guys have been taken, and people probably wonder, why didn't you go get that guy? Well, maybe we couldn't find a trade partner. There has to be that, someone willing to move back, something that makes sense of what you got to give up to go up. And in this case with TJ, or again with Deone, these also hit places of need for your team. And they're sticking on your board. Do you know if they're going to fall to you, or do you know that you know? But if you feel that highly about them, and you're going, man, there's 15 picks between you and them, odds are at least all it takes is one that can take them, and that's what you worry about.
That's what you don't know is if you feel that highly about them, you figure, gosh, somebody else does too, right?
At least one other person.
Right, yeah. You went into the draft with 10 picks, you came out with 9, and I know we don't know how this is going to go. We like the picks. I mean, the positions are great. What do any of us know?
Right.
But there was a big consensus, and I think it's pretty accurate. It's a hard roster to make. And I went in the draft saying a lot of teams wish they had our needs, because there's a lot of teams that have a further way to go than we do, starting with Josh and the whole thing. What is your gut feel about how many of these guys are going to be on the 53? And certainly there's 3 corners. That'd be hard for all 3 of those guys to get on there. Although we got a guy we just extended who was a 6th rounder. So what are your thoughts about the depth of this class? And you got a lot of positional.
Yeah, year after drafting 10
flood.
guys.
Yeah,
you drafted 9.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a hard roster to make.
I get your question, and it makes sense. And we asked that in here. What part of that truly is following the board late in the draft, and you start asking yourself the question, all right, how does this player make the roster? And sometimes it's on 4th down. That's like he's going to beat out someone else, and it could even be at a different position. Right. This 5th corner or 4th corner beats out a 6th wide receiver. It doesn't always come up with the same position. And we did draft 3 corners, but it's really 2 outside corners. Hancock we're looking at him as a nickel safety, so more in that the way we've used Cam Lewis, but could play outside. And so you would love it for a guy like him if he comes in and shows his worth. That's a game day jersey roster saver that can play all those spots.
He's a safety net for the roster if somebody goes down, and plus he's playing teams.
Did you say safety net, like no pun intended, or that was
safety
good?
net.
He does it all the time.
What?
He
Good
does
play
it all
on
the
words.
time. You don't even know he's doing it.
What are you talking about?
He's a safety. You said safety net.
Safety. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I told you. He doesn't even know he's doing it.
Come on, that's a stretch.
You said one of the more eye-opening things you said Saturday night after your class was put to bed was that if Deone Walker came out in the 24 draft based on the junior season he had, he'd be a first-round pick. And I'm thinking, dang, and you got him in the 4th because he played with a back injury last season and his production suffered. His leverage wasn't as good. His pad level wasn't as good. It kind of affected his production. Do you think this deep class of defensive tackles is why he slipped that far? Or are there that many teams out there that look at a drop in production and just move on without digging deeper and doing the work? I'm not saying that other teams don't do the work, but to the degree maybe that some other clubs do, like yourselves.
Yeah, I think ultimately, Chris, there could maybe to some teams it was a turnoff. Like I didn't see, I didn't see an effort on play that I saw the year before, or what happened, or ultimately felt like the drop off. Is he trending that way, or was it an anomaly? Which am I getting? Am I getting 2023 Deone or 20? And so, listen, I've talked to enough people. I feel like he was going to go pretty soon. There's some other players, quite candidly, that fell to 4 also that we were surprised. Not many, but a few that it just sometimes it happens. Khalil Shakir was a guy we had a real good grade on, and sometimes just there's runs on positions. I think part of it is the depth of the draft. People hit a spot and started pivoting elsewhere, nervous that by the time they got around to them later, they may not be there. And we just said, yes, we're going to lose out on something else. We are.
Right.
But if we can get this guy close to what he was in 2023, that's a no-brainer pick.
Yeah. Because there were, to your point, there were 10 defensive linemen taken in round 1 and another 9 in round 2.
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying, how other teams just pivoted to other positions later. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Give us an idea of, because your overall thoughts about this draft. I think it seems to us it went really well. And, all my buddies, because I was actually watching the draft, taking interest, and so was everybody else. They're like, what do you think? Like I'm I'm asking you, what do I know? But I told them, I said, the first three guys you got, Hairston, Sanders, and Jackson, at one point when our run-up, they were all mocked to the Bills in the first round.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So these guys do have some chops that you can look forward to, and I was like, oh my gosh, because I can't it's hard to keep track of the whole, I don't have a board, right? And I was like, who's out there? And you knew these guys, this Landon Jackson, you see the transformation from him from when he was a young player to an upper player. How close to his ceiling is he at this point? Because it looks to me like he's still got some juice.
I think he does. I think, well said. I was talking about this earlier. Like, this is a guy that he is a good player. He plays hard. He has a great feel for the game, but there's still some rush stuff that when he gets some pro coaching. And the other part of that, he surprised me how well he athletically tested. And sometimes that doesn't translate on the field because guys lack instincts or feel for the game. He has that. And so I'm going, man, I thought he would be an average to above average tester. Some of the things he did was, his vertical was 40 or 41, something crazy for a 6'6" guy like that. So I do think, and to your point, I think all our first four picks, all those guys at one point were being mocked, if not to us, to other teams in the first round. So we just felt let's take advantage of the value of the D-line depth of this draft.
Your fifth-round tight end, Jackson Hawes, is an Ivy League grad, spent his last year at Georgia Tech, which isn't an easy academic school either, but he looks like a throwback inline tight end, and your roster seemed to be in need of a tight end that can do some of that dirty work. Would you put him in, we've kind of heard some things about him, would you put him in the Lee Smith on-field demeanor category?
Yeah, I think Jackson is, he's not as big as Lee. Lee was a giant, but yes, he is a classic Y tight end, but I do think there are athletic traits in him. I don't think he, is he going to be a mismatch man-to-man? No. But he's got feel, he's got size, he's got length, he's got good hands, he catches the ball great, understands the game very well, which you would probably think going to Ivy League and going to Georgia Tech. So if, our best blocker today is Dawson Knox, and Dawson, to his credit, came out as a receiving tight end that's really a three-down player. If he went down, now we can go some packages and run with Dawson and him in there, and it saves Kincaid from some of that stuff. So I think it just gives us more versatility to what we can do, and how we line up. And again, if something happens to Dawson, you feel really good about him coming in and being that blocker for us.
In this draft, what was the biggest surprise player that you draft? One of these guys that you drafted that you thought, wow, who's the biggest value pick that you thought, wow, I can't believe he's still on our board?
Yeah, I could make a case for a few of these guys. The guy that Jordan Hancock from Ohio State was a guy that our scouts, I have them do on Monday before the draft. I give them a few scenarios and I put them in 3 different groups, and they present to me and our executive staff. Terry's sitting in there too. It's a good chance for them to present, but it's also a good chance for them to, at the finish line, give me in these scenarios who they're really convicted on. And the guy that came up the most with one of mine was undervalued mid-round pick, which we called like 3 to 5 or whatever, undervalued stock. Like who would you? And he came up 4 times more than any player. Not 4 times more. He came up 4 times, which was more than any player. So when he came up, like he was one of those ones we were sweating it. The pick is in before we can now pick him. I turn around, behind me in the draft room is all of our area national scouts. So I turned around and I saw as much enthusiasm from that as any pick there was, because there's a lot of guys in there that are fired up. So again, I can make some cases for some other players, but if you ask my college scouts, they would say that's the guy they would say.
All right.
I'm sure you heard about this. The the prank call to Shedeur Sanders, which is getting investigated by the league. But when we talked to Chase Lunt, the offensive tackle from UConn that you selected on day 3, he told us he got like 3 or 4 of those kinds of calls. What are you expecting the league to do in terms of, they deal out these phone numbers so teams can contact the player, make sure they're alive before they get drafted, and this has become a huge negative. How do you police that? How do you think the NFL is going to react to this stuff? Because it's a kid's best day of his life, and you got these Debbie Downers wrecking it.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I'm sure the young man knows he made a mistake, and but it's happened before. We've heard stories. This one, obviously they recorded it or whatever, and so it was easy to find out where it was coming from. But it is disappointing that happens to some of these players, and like I said, I've heard it. It's one of those things I've always thought. I've always wondered, because we do get a list with all their numbers, and it's like, man, that could easily end up in the wrong person's hands. Like, even if it's like somebody prints it out and drops it in the wastebasket, and it could. Yeah. I'm surprised it hasn't happened more. I don't have the solution. I don't. Because you do want to call the player, make sure he's breathing, all systems a go before you turn the pick in. So I'm disappointed for those players that their moment, starting with Shedeur and Chase Lunt, and I know somebody said it happened to Cooper DeJean last year. I've heard of some others, and Chase brought it up on my call with him.
Was he like, are you really the Bills? Was he asking?
Yeah, he said, is this for real? And I said, yes, this is Buffalo. And I think it was his dad with him. He goes, the reason he's asked because he's been prank called today about it. And I was like, oh, it's terrible. Well, nope. I promise you, this is it. You're getting drafted to Buffalo.
I am taking you.
Yeah.
You can wait until you see it on TV.
But it's sad that happened.
Man.
We need to, hopefully this was a bad lesson and we get this corrected.
With this draft, was there any, for instance, you got, with Max Hairston, you got a lot faster in the secondary right away. Was there any kind of overriding thing with these positions, like the guys on the D-line or the corners that you took, even the wide receiver Prather? Was there anything that maybe we're going to emphasize this year rather than last year? Like, you wanted your guys to be a little faster this year. You always want to be fast.
You do.
And there's always nuance to everything. Was there anything overriding that you wanted to go in and say, listen, we want to help change the personality or a little bit of the identity of our team, and this draft class can help us do that?
Yeah, I thought, listen, you're right. You said it. You always want to add speed anywhere you can. You can't get enough of it. I always emphasize we got to make sure they're still good football players. It's not on a track, as you know. I would say up front, if we felt we had good players, we wanted to emphasize size and length. On the D-line especially, if we could do that. Some dog, what I mean, just getting a little more gritty, and if we could do that. If they all line up, again, I'm not going to pass on a player, let's just say Ed Oliver does not have prototypical size and length, but he makes up for it. I'm not going to pass on a guy like that for a lesser player, but when they line up and it's close, let's go for the bigger, longer, stronger, and we resoundingly did that with Deone Walker.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's he going to play at? Like 345 or?
He'll probably play in the 330s, maybe low 340s. We'll see when he gets in here. It's more to us about body comp, mass, how you move versus your actual weight.
Yeah.
So we go beyond just the number itself. 330 on this person can be totally different.
He doesn't look sloppy at all.
And he was a basketball player. He's got hands and feet. So again, as Brian Gaine, I give him credit. He alludes to this all the time in the draft room. We're talking. He goes, there just aren't very many men walking the earth that look like this.
Yeah,
right.
We call them the one percenters.
That's what I'm saying.
less than
one percenter.
They're genetically different. That's why they go high at the. You got to get the guys who. Nobody's like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Those are the guys you got to get. And there's a lot. You go down the list, like Max Harrison, okay, Jordan Hancock, Dorian Strong, Kaden Prather. Those are athletes. There's guys, Joe Andreessen was watching the games 3 years ago, right? So there's guys in the stands that are like that.
Yep.
There's no Deone Walkers in the stands.
No, we don't have seats big enough for him.
Yeah. So those are the guys you really got to. You got to vet those guys, and when they come along, you got to grab them because they are difference makers. They have the potential to be huge difference makers.
Yeah, I mean, at a minimum, he's going to be a large man in there.
Right.
If he's
Have him
nothing
get off the bus
else.
first.
Yeah, even the 2024 version that was less consistent could serve a very good role as just a large space eater. If we get him, healthier, and he's in much better position, as I said to the media the night. But if we get him anything close to 2023, it was a no-brainer.
Right? Yeah. Didn't get a chance to ask you about Kaden Prather, who he mentioned. I saw his game against USC. I know it's him and Felton that were the primary weapons, but I mean, that quarterback trusted him on third downs. They come back and win that game. I think it was 29-28. He had 9 catches for over 100. What do you like about him most?
Yeah, I mean, really down there, you're going, all right, how does this player make the team? And you're looking at various positions, and at that point, you're looking at a lot of guys with similar grades. Where do you want to go? We've done that with a Deone Jackson, a Balin Spector, some guys that we have found there, even an Alex Austin that's played in the league. The card reads really good, and then we spent some time with him. Ronald Curry went to work out him and Felton, and really liked his energy, liked his workout. And so when you have those touch points, sometimes that's the tiebreaker. You know what? I'll put my name on this guy. He's big, long, fast, and you feel like some of his stuff will translate to, maybe he could make it as that last guy as a special teamer. It won't be an easy battle in the receiver room.
Yeah.
It won't. But if he can prove on fourth down and prove a vertical enough guy, a bigger, fast type specimen, that's how he makes this roster.
There are reports out there about a free agent visit.
Yeah.
You want to confirm, or you want to?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, Elijah Moore is here. He's a guy we've spoken to a few times leading up to the draft, and we just kind of put a pin in it, just like we did several other positions, and said, hey, let's wait till the draft and see where we're at, see if he's still interested after. I mean, if we took a guy in the first or second round, he's probably not too interested.
Yeah.
But we didn't, and so we, picked up those conversations over the weekend, and he and his wife came up today and visited, and so we'll see. It's nothing imminent today, anything like that, but a very good visit, and we'll see where that goes.
It's good stuff. You're not done. I mean, how many roster spots have you got free? I mean, give us the numbers on how many guys you really have to go. I mean, you could go to camp today, I guess, but
yeah, I mean, we've got, I believe, 11 or 12. I can't remember the number of UDFAs that will come in. We got to make sure they pass the physical, so it's agreed upon, but we got to get them in here, get that signed off on. That would be a week from this Thursday. They would fly and do that. So we're probably in the 87, 88 range.
okay. If those guys all pan
If
out,
those
yeah.
guys all, everything gets to the finish line there. But we will have a rookie camp. We've gotten guys out of there, the Kingsley Jonathans, Buffalo Joe, Cam Lewis's. So Jamarcus Ingram, so we'll evaluate that. We've invited a good number of players that we want to get eyes on. And if we feel like there's an upgrade there over somebody who's currently on our roster, we could swap a guy out. So right now we're working to build to that 90 that we want to take to St. John Fisher. And so the next month, between now and regular veteran minicamp, we want to get the best 90 that we can, build that, and have our team ready to go, and then show up and start camp.
Nothing. I don't want to put you on the spot, and I won't ask you to mention any names, but every year, and after post June 1, how does that change things financially in the league year and with the contracts? How does that explain to us the big, the boulders of what that means when you get past June 1st?
Yeah, I mean, post June 1st, there are some guys out there that they changed that rule years ago where you can up to 2 post June 1st 1 cuts. We did that with Tre'Davious a year ago to help you split. But there will actually be some guys that teams drafted over or they want to, move on from, that at this point they'll wait till probably June 1st and do it. And it just allows you to take half the hit now and put the other half on next year if you want to categorize it, that
All right.
way. If not, you would want to release them before then.
Last one, sometimes too, and the last one from me, without mentioning any names again, is it possible that you might extend one of the guys you love and respect here before the season starts?
Yeah, I mean, I think we wouldn't close the door on any of that. Nothing has really transpired with any of our guys since we did Christian Benford was the last guy. It was at that point. It was, as I alluded to at the owners' meetings, all eyes on this draft.
Right.
We got this arsenal. We got to make the most of it. We have time. So again, I'm never closing the door. We don't have anything going, but I'm never closing the door on that. We've done it all the way up. I think we did Dawson Knox on the day we were flying to play the Rams. That Wednesday before we were flying up there. So, again, I don't know that we will, but I would never say we wouldn't. I just, right now we're going to build this roster out. My gut says that would be more of a summertime conversation than a spring conversation.
Well, Brandon, thanks for the time.
Thanks,
we
man.
appreciate it. Good luck working on your handicap now that you can breathe a little bit.
Yeah, you have nothing to do now, right?
Yeah, nothing at all. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah. See you in July.
Yeah. Appreciate the time as always.